we just need to renew the rest of the contracts. Thanks, John.
I'd like to call the Port Hueneme City Council meeting to order. We'll start with a flag salute, and I will be providing the inspiration this evening. So if you please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. As of yesterday, and for the forthcoming week, we are commemorating this is Constitution Week, and this is to celebrate the signing of our Constitution, as well as to celebrate citizenship in general. I believe there may be some of those in the audience that will be addressing us on this issue, so I'm not going to steal their thunder, so to speak. But I did want to share with you some observations. This past week, I attended the California League of Cities in Sacramento, and this organization is dedicated really to not just assisting cities throughout California, but really their core function is to preserve local control and autonomy. 20-some years ago, Port Hueneme became a chartered city at its discretion. And by being a charter city, you have certain authorities that are not otherwise provided to general law cities. And the purpose there is to really to advantage the city as a local jurisdiction, and to the extent that it's possible to protect its local interests and autonomy. What I learned in Sacramento is that more so than ever, local autonomy is under attack at both the state and federal level. There are a variety of initiatives and bills that have been introduced, have been passed, and are being proposed that would erode and take away the beauty of being a local jurisdiction. So I am dedicating myself, and I call upon my neighbors, my friends, to follow me in the mantra that it's Port Hueneme first, and we need to protect who we are. The city has a proud legacy of overcoming adversity, and it's done it on its own. And so that's my inspiration this evening is God bless Port Hueneme. All right, so with that, we will have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Berg.
Here.
Councilmember Hensley.
Here.
Councilmember Sharkey.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Schnapp.
Here.
Mayor Fick.
Here. I have an agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I hear a couple of seconds, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so approved. That brings us to open forum. I have a couple of cards. They're not specific to anything on the agenda as far as I can tell, so I'm just going to go in order. Deborah Barber Saliva?
Savala.
I'm sorry.
Deborah Baber Savala. I live in Port Hueneme, and I want to thank the council for your words on Constitution Week. I'm with POV, Point of View, Ventura County, had sent the request on to you folks, and I know it was the middle of the summer. I only learned of it myself in July. At any rate, tonight I ask you to reconsider. No, I thank you. I thank you for considering the request for proclamation for Constitution Week. As I wrote before I came tonight, even though the celebration and recognition in this week is, it's never too late to put in a good word for the document. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rod Butler, for your help in this. Our Constitution lays out our liberties and laws, which delivers the full means for lifestyles we enjoy. Words and the ideas words convey throughout generations are the linchpins of our Constitution. That document is what all of us, all of you, swear to affirm and uphold. On September 17, 1787, 230 years ago, our Constitution was signed and ready to be submitted for ratification. Our founding fathers were so concerned about this document's words that in addition to thousands of copies produced in English, they also produced 1,500 in German for Pennsylvania citizens and several hundred in Dutch for New York's large ethnic population. Our founders were intimately familiar with how hard it was to craft the words and wanted to make it possible for the vast majority of our nascent nation's population to understand the words they were getting ready to proclaim as the heart and soul of these United States. The original document from 1787 had 4,500 words. Our Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to our Constitution, added 4 years later in 1791, contained 462 words. Slaves in our nation's history were freed by fewer than 500 words, and women throughout the United States won the right to vote with 39 words. Today, our Constitution, with its 27 amendments, contains fewer than 8,000 words. These few words have influenced untold governments and countless constitutions throughout the world. Here in Ventura County, I'm proud to say that this initiative, that Camarillo and Ojai City Councils have proclaimed Constitution Week, and tonight, Port Hueneme, my home city in Ventura County, has done something similar. Tomorrow night, Oxnard will do it on their agenda. The Ventura County Board of Education produced a proclamation, and the Ventura County Board of Supervisors will do so tomorrow at their meeting. It's never too late. And once again, I thank you for joining me, POV, and over 700 of our citizens who signed a proclamation or a request asking for it. And I want to share with you constitutions in Spanish. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin Jones.
Good evening, Council. I'm making the presumption that not everyone here knows that the general fund of Oxnard has been downrated by Standard & Poor's. I could speculate, but other people are better at that than I am, but I do wonder how this is going to affect the bond rating and how that will, in effect, cause a higher cost for bonds to do anything in the city of Oxnard, and that includes the wastewater. Wastewater is something not everybody knows about or understands, but the wastewater plant takes care of the CB Center, the city of Port Hueneme, and Oxnard. This is not going to make it any easier for the city and its bond ratings to raise money to take care of wastewater, even though they're separate, the wastewater fund and so on, and utility rates. But it will have, in my opinion, an indirect effect, and I think Council of Port Hueneme should be aware of this, and probably because of the wisdom or lack of wisdom of the City Council of Oxnard, you might give them some friendly advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Gama.
Thank you, Mayor Fig, Council, and staff. This weekend was California Coastal Cleanup, and we sponsored a location here at Hueneme Beach. Laura Hernandez did, and I. And we had less volunteers than we did last year, but we collected more trash than we did last year. So we did more with less, which was really cool. Want to thank the city for providing a dumpster. That was very helpful. And I also want to thank Will Berg and Chief Salinas, because they were a great help with the administrative things that we had to do out there. And I even saw Will having a really good time with the kids, and it's really nice to view that. Chief Salinas, they brought out the RTV vehicle, and that was largely responsible for us collecting more trash, because they were able to shuttle the trash back to us and made us more efficient. And so, again, we really appreciate that. So with less, we did more than last year. And next year, we're planning on trying to get some sponsors and make it more of a event with music and perhaps hot dogs or something like that. But it's something that was very welcomed on the beach. So many people come by and give us positive kudos and thoughts, and it's just a pleasure to see all these young kids come out and take part in cleaning up their environment. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you, City, for your support. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Chief.
And thank you, Stephen, and Laura. I don't know if she's here in the audience, but kudos to trying to, or being the leaders in coordinating the effort here at Hueneme Beach. Okay, so I have no other speaker cards, at least for open forum. That brings us to consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Move to.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so approved. That then brings us to Chief of Police. Mr. Salinas, would you?
We're just going to wait for the PowerPoint to come up. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City staff. I'm here this evening to present our monthly crime report for the month of August. This will reflect the first 8 months here in the city of Port Hueneme. Here's our first chart which reflects January through August. During the month of August, we had a total of 36 UCR crimes, which is less than last year, as well as less than the previous month.
Excuse me, Chief, could you bring that microphone up a little bit?
Sure. Is it on? Okay. So last month we had 36 UCR crimes, which again is less than the previous month, as well as less than the previous year, which falls consistent with our declining crime rate in the city of Port Hueneme. So thus far we've had a total of 23 violent crimes, which is averages out to less than three a month in the city, as well as a total of 248 property crimes. And as you can see, larceny and petty theft continue to be the driving force behind our crime rate. If we compare it to last year, as you see the 2016 totals, we had 47 violent crime up until this point, as compared to the 23 from this year, which results in an over 50% decrease. And if you really want to measure the safety of your city, you know, violent crime is the category you typically look at. And then we had a total of 302 property crime last year, as compared to the 248 we've had thus far, which there you can see our declining crime rate, which is 52% in violent crime, 19% in property crime, and an overall total crime reduction of 23% thus far this year, as compared to this last year. And last year was already a historical low, and so this is continuing that downward trend. So we are now on Instagram. We now have an account. As you can see, we have 211 followers as of this morning. we showcased our department photo, and then we also posted our real official post, and that was the Hueneme Beach cleanup this previous Saturday. So now the city can find us both on Facebook and on Instagram. And Instagram really caters to the younger crowd, so it's a different group of people now we're reaching out to. Just this past week, I attended the California State University of Channel Islands Scholarship Awards, where there are residents of our community who receive scholarships for nursing, technology, and engineering. And I was there as a proud representative of this city, as well as for the California Strawberry Festival. And these are some of the representatives that receive scholarships that are from South Oxnard or from our very own community. So that was a very special event to attend. And a lot of people were very surprised to see me there, and it was well received. And here's a picture of me with the college president, Erica, who was also very excited to see me there, as they typically don't see law enforcement at these types of events. Hueneme Beach Cleanup Day. I wanted to start off with that wonderful picture. Here's myself to start off the day with our 10 explorers that attended the event to help us clean the beach. So I'll start with that picture. And then we actually have our kids out here on the beach collecting trash. I wanted to point out this picture. As you can see there in the shadow, well, kind of in the shadow, there's about 10 to 12 cigarette butts there on the sand. And you can see the type of trash our kids were picking up and how people actually consider our beach at times their own personal ashtray. So these are the types of things that we were picking up out on the beach. Here's myself walking with the kids. They actually walked the entire length of the beach. They went in one direction to the J Street Canal, and then went back in the other direction and went all the way back towards the lighthouse, and then back again to the Flight Memorial, where our headquarters were located. Here's the large amount of trash as they're lifting it up into the dumpster. Another group photo, there's a picture of the city's recently purchased ATV or RTV that we used for this, and that's the vehicle that we use to patrol our beach late at night, and really gives our officers an advantage into finding those people that shouldn't be out on our beach late at night. And then one last photo I wanted to share with everybody here. This is Councilmember Will Berg giving our kids some life lessons, and really sitting with them and talking to them.
He's pointing.
Yeah, he is pointing. He's finger wagging. He's really getting into it there. So the police department has been working with the port for the upcoming Banana Festival, which is scheduled for September 30th. I wanted to bring up this map to show you where it is now located. Its main entrance will now be located at Market Street and Surfside, as you can see by the star up on the map there. We will actually be closing Market Street because the event will actually come out onto Market Street, where they'll have some attractions for some of our youth and children, such as Jolly Jumps out on Market Street. So this past Saturday, I met with Anacapa View Beach Homes and their association to make sure that they understood how the event was going to transpire, and what we were going to do as a police agency to make sure that they were not inconvenienced by the event. And so what we did is we created some parking permits that they will have. And so when they come into the area, all they'll do is show their parking permit to the explorer, who will allow them to then drive within the perimeter and into their homes. I wanted to show you who our newly Representative Officer of the Year will be for the 14th Annual Hueneme Bay Community First Responders Awards. That's scheduled for Friday, September 29th. If at all possible, I encourage everyone to attend. It'll be at 10 a.m. at the Hueneme Bay Clubhouse, and this is a picture of the recipient, who is Officer Nora Starna. And she'll be receiving the award in large part due to her work on the HEART program that we have recently talked about. Come in October, actually at the last meeting I made mention that I was going to be coming forth with a TASER report about our less lethal the current state of affairs of our less lethal weapons. That was been pushed to October, as well as the staff report on staffing for implementation of additional personnel for these as a result of the citywide marijuana dispensaries coming here to the city of Port Hueneme. And then in October, I'll be presenting you with our September crime statistics. So again, this is more for the public that is possibly watching at this time, is to let them know that they can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, and there are the direct links to those social media websites. Also, I wanted to note that is not in the presentation. There was a question in regards to the gang injunction article that was recently in the VC Star this weekend, and if that has any type of impact here for the citizens of Port Hueneme. It does not. There are currently 375 gang members on the gang injunction. Some of them do live in the city of Port Hueneme and that have been properly served. The new streamlined process will allow these 375 served gang members to actually have a hearing with a judge to actually provide their side of the story if they feel they were improperly served and have a right to be removed from the gang injunction. So while we have residents on that gang injunction, there's nothing that we need to do as a city in order to assist the city of Oxnard or the Oxnard Police Department. And then lastly, Citizen Steve Gama brought up the traffic corridor along Ventura Road. So I wanted to talk about some of the measures that we worked on this past couple of weeks. So we had our actual, one of our officers actually do traffic radar out on Ventura Road for the last 2 weeks, and he issued 13 speeding citations with an average speed of 45 miles per hour, which is 20 miles over the posted speed limit in that area during school time, and that's when he was out there in that traffic corridor. We also deployed, if you hadn't seen, 2 traffic trailers which were on loan from the Oxnard Police Department. They were collecting data for 2 days on Thursday and Friday of last week. We'll then use that data to figure out when the violations are occurring and when to properly deploy our officers to actually engage in more enforcement so we can identify those speeders and actually let them know that we're taking this very seriously, and hopefully being out there actively enforcing it will make a big difference and actually slow everyone down. So that's what I wanted to report, and that concludes my report this evening.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Chief, in regard to the gang injunction, we have our own here in the city, of course, and yeah, we passed one. The question is does there need to be any updating on that?
I'm unaware of any type of gang injunction this police department is currently facilitating. In speaking with Commander Albertson, the gang injunction is facilitated and it was actually completed by the Oxnard Police Department. We assisted them with the gang injunction, and we actually have residents on that gang injunction, but I'm unaware of any.
Well, back about the same time Oxnard was doing theirs, this city council passed a gang injunction here in the city.
Okay. I will look into that, and I will have an answer for you.
I remember we had a big discussion over the areas it should cover, and I was trying to get the entire beachfront included, and that was didn't qualify, I guess, but some of the other parts of Surfside Drive did, and that's my recollection of it. So, yeah, I saw those articles and I thought they were very interesting, and it just got me thinking that if we need to update or look at ours, but you know, I'm glad I could bring that to your attention. Thanks.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for your update. Now, you showed the police explorers there on Saturday for the beach cleanup.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us a little bit more about the explorers and what age group and what they end up doing.
So the Explore program is a youth program that's actually run by the Port Hueneme Police Department. It's a part of the Boy Scouts of America and their Learning for Life program, which exposes young adults between the ages of 14 and 21 to a career in law enforcement. And so we teach them about law enforcement itself. They go on ride-alongs. They go and complete a 3-week summer camp, which many of them completed this past summer. And so we As a result of that, we took our numbers from 6 to 18. So a lot of the people that participate in our Explore program are actually residents of the city of Port Hueneme, and it just provides an additional outlet or youth program for our youth here in the city of Port Hueneme. It's really available to anyone between the ages of 14 to 21. All they need to do is go online, provide us with an application, and we'd be more than happy to talk to them about our program.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I echo Mr. Sharkey's comments. I was going to ask about your observation of how effective that injunction has been for our community. So perhaps at the next occasion that you update us on these statistics. The other thing I found kind of interesting was the ability to identify crimes that have been committed in our community, or at least in the case of Oxnard, that are gang-related. And that's not really a profile that's indicated in your statistics. How difficult is that for you to be able to indicate within each one of those categories those that are deemed to be gang-related?
The violent crime category that I presented this evening, it will not be very difficult at all to identify how many of those are actually gang-related. Just right off the top of my head, I don't know that maybe 2 or 3 at tops are actually gang-related, but I will bring back some factual information to support that, but because that information is readily available to us. So
Okay.
it won't be an issue.
And again, as Mr. Sharkey had indicated, if there's a way in which we can take more full advantage of that injunction, if in fact it's needed, we certainly would, would welcome your suggestions, recommendations, and the like.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. All right. We're coming now to Public Works, but I'm sorry.
I think,
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, if I may, seeing there's a lot of baseball players here, I'm guessing that item 8C is to do with a grant for baseball, and some of these people are participants in it, is that correct? No? School's tomorrow, maybe we should consider moving them up to 8A and moving A on B and B to C.
any objections to put that to the front of the agenda?
no, sounds good.
Okay, so item 8C will be the first to be considered, and then we'll go back to A and B. And I believe that this is, Don, is this yours or Mr. Hickox? I'm not sure who's up on this one.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. No, that's Steve. Mr. Hickox, our deputy, has been working on that one, and I'm glad you moved it forward. Steve, you want to go ahead and take it?
Yeah, thanks, Don. Thank you, Mayor Fig, members of council. This is being presented this evening. It was work that was started on by Carmen Nichols, the deputy city manager, before she left the city. And it was in consideration with the Baseball Tomorrow Fund and grant writing services through California Consulting, which is different than the presentation that you heard at the last council meeting. This is a one-time grant funding opportunity specifically for the Baseball Tomorrow Fund. The grant provides up to $50,000 with a matching contribution and or in-kind services to provide that matching contribution. And Carmen asked myself and Fred Camarillo to get involved once she was departing, and asked that we follow through with this program. And I'm here tonight to ask that City Council consider allowing us staff to enter into a grant funding application with California Consulting. It's a the fee will be based upon the amount of grant funding awarded in cash money. The in-kind services would be provided by Public Works Department. Some of the in-kind services would be provided by Public Works Department in the tune of labor and equipment services. Also, the Port Hueneme Little League will be contributing to the in-kind services by doing fundraising and also doing some labor hours associated with the rehab of the ballparks at Bubbling Springs Park. The grant funding is seeking up to, I think it's $34,000 instead of the full $50,000 because they want the Port Hueneme Little League would like to install a fence for the T-ball area and also include new scoreboards so that the scores are actually able to be seen from the stands. And so that comes in at projected cost at $34,000. So we would be seeking a grant for $34,000 plus looking for approval for this council to allow staff and us to provide in-kind services in the repair of those facilities. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Questions, please.
Thank you very much. Would the fee still be up to $3,000, you think?
Yes, sir. There's a cost proposal in the up to $3,000 max.
I see. Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the presentation, Mr. Hickox. This is a matching grant?
Correct.
Does it have to be matched dollar for dollar, or is there a percentage?
It's 50%. It's dollar for dollar, but it doesn't have to be cash matching. It can be $34,000 of grant funding, and then up to $34,000 of in-kind services or funding contributions also.
So it would be a mixture of both from the city as well as the Little League?
Correct. I've been given a nod from the president of the Port Hueneme Little League that they would be doing fundraising activities to raise some money, and they would also have some of the parents who are licensed contractors or handy people to assist in the labor hours required.
Do we know what the percentage might be from each group? So would it be 50-50 from the city and the Little League, or?
That has not been determined yet. It's largely going to be dependent upon the grant award, I would think.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Hickox, would there be any advantage or cost efficiencies if we broaden that application to include rethatching of the fields, the softball fields at Miranda Park, which are in need of renovation, as well as lighting and other amenities associated with the use of those softball fields? Would that help, hinder, and take advantage of the application process to simply make it a broader request?
It may have been possible, but given the timelines for this grant, which is October 1st, the application has to be submitted, and the amount of effort needed to, first identify the additional work that would be proposed, then have to get cost estimates for that work. So it would be pushing getting it in the application in time for the October 1st deadline.
Then my suggestion would be, I certainly don't want to hold up the opportunity for the Little League, but perhaps to partner up with the various softball leagues that would take advantage of the Miranda Park facility for a similar kind of arrangement where there be in-kind contributions or financial support from fundraising to reduce our expense of having to make those improvements. So perhaps you could take a look at that and make the appropriate contacts.
Okay, I'll get with Anna Hanley, the Parks and Rec manager, and we'll have that discussion.
Great. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll second that, and I'll invite the folks from the Little League, when you're doing your fundraising, please send me a letter. I'll keep waiting to hear from you.
All right, I have a motion for approval. Do I have a
Second.
second? I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is your opportunity. Anybody, I see baseball hats out in the crowd, so if you would like to approach the council and express any opinions you might have, now's your opportunity. You don't have a baseball hat on.
I don't, I'm sorry, I came straight from work. I'm Anna Bolo, I'm the Vice President of the Little League. Unfortunately, our president wasn't able to attend, but I would like to sincerely thank you for approving the grant request. I personally have spent about 350 volunteer hours just this year. A couple of weeks ago on Labor Day, I painted, or with the assistance of my husband and our fields manager and just some random stranger that was passing by, painted the snack bar. So we're definitely trying to make an improvement to the fields. We've received a lot of appreciation and people telling us how great the fields are looking. So we expect to be bringing back a whole lot of the baseball players that have been leaving the fields or Wainimi to go to El Rio because their fields are, look so much better than ours. So if you have time to swing by and see the improvement, and within the next couple of weeks, and even if the grant isn't as much as we would like it to be, you could definitely see the improvement in the field. So we appreciate the fact that you're giving us this chance. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so with that, we'll return back to the original agenda, which would be item 8A, which has to do with the water rate cost service study presentation. So,
Again, good evening, council. We have the two items, A and B. The first one is the review by Raftellus Financial, and then the second one is the proposal for water system strategic workshop. Mr. Hickox is our deputy director, and he handles our water issues. He's worked long hours with a consultant to put this together, and I think he's done an excellent job. And I'm going to turn it over to him. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Villafana. Back in January of this year, City Council authorized staff to enter into a service agreement with Raftellus Financial Consultants for the purposes of developing a cost of service and water rate analysis. And I'm pleased to inform you this evening that that analysis has been completed. The presentation will be presented by Steve Gagnon, the representative of Raftellus Financial Consultants. And he has information I'm sure he'll be more than happy to share with you and answer any questions that you may have. So, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor Fig, members of City Council. Again, my name is Steve Gagnon with Raftellus Financial Consultants. We're a small 60-person consulting firm consulting across the country. We specialize in financial management in water and wastewater rates, stormwater rates, and recycled water rates. So today I'm going to be presenting to you, here's our agenda for this evening. We're going to review the model assumptions. We're going to talk about certain special questions. Part of the RFP, or part of this project, we had to address what we've been calling 5 special questions from the beginning, so I want to address those. We're going to review factors that affect your rates and the revenue that the water system needs. And then at the end of this, we'll review a total of 12 financial plan and rate structure options for you to decide on. They've been put forth by your staff and mayor. Okay, so here are the typical steps in a rate study. If you remember, I was here probably about 5 months ago, and we did the first circle at the bottom of this arrow here, where we talked about a rate setting framework. We talked about pricing objectives with all of you to help so that you could tell us what is most important when you set rates. Okay, that was called a pricing objectives exercise. Then we went back and we did the second circle, the financial plan, where we try to assess how much money does your water system need. We try to answer that question, and then in the next circle, we design a set of rates to collect that amount of money, and that's where we are today, okay? We're in between the third circle and the fourth circle, where we're looking for direction from City Council about how to proceed for the final rate adoption, which is the fourth circle. Okay, so let's just quickly look at some assumptions that we used in your financial plan. So what we do is we project your costs forward for 10 years, okay? And we project your costs using a number of inflationary factors. These are fairly standard, and they're in front of you on this slide here. Okay, so general inflation, or items that fall in line with general inflation go up about 3% a year. We have salary, benefits, electricity. And what I want to point out is for fiscal year 2018, which is the initial year that we're using to set your rates, we assumed no increase in Port Hueneme water costs, okay? 0% in 2018, but then in fiscal year 19 and the out years, we're assuming a 4% increase every year in the future, okay? Just want you to be aware of those. And I want to define a couple of terms here that are pretty important. So at the end, near the end of this presentation, we have this matrix for you to choose from. And in the matrix, it contains a number of financial plan options, okay? And when I use the term financial plan, what I'm talking about is the total amount of money that you want your rates to collect, okay? And for you guys, it's around, your water system needs to collect about 7.7, give or take, $1 million a year. Okay, and that varies with each financial plan because it's based on a number of factors, one of them being your CIP. Okay, but for each financial plan, we were requested to give you a number of rate structure options. Okay, and those rate structure options for at least the first 3 financial plans collect the same amount of money for each financial plan. So we'll be looking at this financial plan scenario number 1. And it collects a certain amount of money, but it does so using different rate structures. And so at the bottom of this slide here, I have 2 tables, if you will, and you see a fixed charge in bold of $34 by meter size, okay? So when I say rate structure, it's a combination of a fixed charge plus a volumetric charge, and you can vary those. You know, if you up your fixed charge, you decrease your volumetric and vice versa. But at the end of the day, they're designed to collect the same amount of money in each financial plan. Okay, is this clear to everyone? I just want to define that so that we all understand that. And next I want to talk about what affects your revenue needs, how much money you need for the water system. There's a number of items up here, and I've attempted to put arrows that being sensitive to the size of those arrows. There's a number of things such as, what if we eliminate RO treatment? That decreases your costs, but you can see it's a small arrow. So the information that we've been given from your staff, if you were to just eliminate RO treatment, it decreases your costs, but not substantially. Okay, and then there's other things like using actual expenses instead of budgeted expenses to set your water rates. That decreases your cost. But you can see the point of this slide is right in the middle, item number 3. It's got the big, large arrow pointing up. That's the gorilla in the room, okay? Meaning that is the single most, they're all important decisions, but that is the most important decision I think that you need to make because it has the most effect on your water rates. That is, how much do you need, or how much are you willing to invest in your water system? You have a water management plan that has $33 million worth of capital in it, okay? And that's the biggest driver of your rates, and that's why that arrow is the biggest compared. And there's a couple of other things, debt service, whether you refinance a loan, I'll be talking about those in a second. And then your reserves. Right now you have an O&M reserve, but you don't actually have a capital reserve policy. We've instituted that for you in this rate study so that you have money set aside for capital. We feel that it's a prudent thing to do. So that's that slide. And now I'm going to be talking about the 5 different special questions that we were asked to address. The first one is, how much does the city owe assuming 3 years of water use? So I'm sure you're aware that for about 2 years ago, the city was not charging itself for irrigation and other water. So we decided at the kickoff meeting a term of 3 years, and we were to calculate how much does the city owe for those 3 years. And Raftellus did some what we call P times Q, price times quality, price times quantity, and we estimate it's right around $800,000 for 3 years, okay? So one of the financial plan options is that you can choose to apply this amount to lower the principal on the general fund loan, okay? So it would be a credit, so to speak, against the loan from the general fund to the water enterprise, and that's part of financial plan option 3, okay? Special question number 2 has to do again with this general fund loan of 5%. It was made back in 2008, And 30-year treasuries were going in the high 4s at that time. So that's probably why the general fund charged around charged 5%. But this question had to do with, what if we refinance the general fund loan? And we decided to use an interest rate of 2.87%. Why? Because that's the current 30-year treasury bond as of late June. And you would save, if you choose to do this, you would save about $360,000 per year in debt service. And that is part of financial plan option 2, which I'll be walking you through in the matrix. And then again, you can, like I said in the prior slide, you can reduce the principal by $800,000. And if you combine that with refinancing, then in total you would save about $400,000 per year in debt service. And again, that's part of financial plan option 3. Okay, so special question number 3 has to do with whether or not we eliminate RO treatment, okay, the membranes. As far as the information that we've been provided, it suggests that the cost savings would be fairly minimal due to the high amount of fixed and remaining costs at the plant. It is our understanding that their pumps are still running, chemicals are still dosing, staff is still working, and therefore the savings is not that high. And if at the end of this presentation, you know, if you need further elaboration on that, I would refer you to Mr. Hickox. But if we shut off the RO treatment, that is part of financial plan option 3. Okay? Okay. So special question number 4. Again, this is the gorilla in the room. Evaluate your yearly revenue requirement. In other words, evaluate how much money you need every year, assuming different levels of CIP, of capital investment. Okay, so your staff and mayor has suggested four different options. So we have financial plan, or option number 1, which funds the full city-provided CIP, which in today's dollars is $33 million over 5 years. Okay? Then you also have a water master plan by AKM Consulting Engineers, I believe, and in that there are projects, and the spacing of those projects is a bit different. So over the course of 5 years, the projects in that water master plan are about $20 million. Okay, and that's option 2. Option 3 is no capital investment at all. And then option 4 is one that was suggested, in which we set rates such that the average single-family bill is approximately $51 per month, and you simply execute the CIP that this revenue can generate. Okay, and at the bottom of the table here, I have the different capital expenditures for each of those different scenarios. So the full city CIP, you can see in 2017, you supposedly spent about $1 million, and then it ups drastically to $9 million, 6 and 4 and so on, for a total of 5 years of $33 million. Okay, and then that water master plan CIP I was talking about, you can see the expenses are a little bit less. For $20 million, there's no CIP, thus the zeros. Then finally, the scenario with $51 a month, you can see it's about 3.5, 2.3, 1.6, and so on, for a total of about $13 million on the right there, okay? And a subtle point is that for that particular scenario, right now I've assumed a rate structure of 45% fixed revenue, which means how high that charge is. I think that'll become more clear when I go through a matrix in a second, in case that doesn't make sense right now. Okay, so when I was here 5 months ago, remember we did this pricing objectives exercise, and I defined these pricing objectives for you, and I said, well, what's important to you? And the feedback I got was, on that day, were essentially 3 things. Someone said affordability is important, someone said conservation is important, and somebody said a balance of administrative ease and customer understanding is important. The reason why I mention this is because it affects special question number 5. Special question number 5 has to do with the appropriate fixed charge. okay? Remember that, those two tables I showed you, the fixed charge and the volumetric charge. Okay, the average in Southern California is agencies set that fixed charge so that they collect roughly about 30% of their revenue through a fixed charge. And then the rest of it comes from a volumetric charge, 70%, okay? Currently, the city collects 58% of their revenue through a fixed charge, okay? And there are pros to that, or there's good things to that. I think they're apparent, and you know, one of them is it's a stable source of revenue for the city because people's bills doesn't vary with how much water they use. So the drought that we just went through, because you collect 58% of your revenue through a fixed charge, you weathered it better than many agencies who only collect, say, 25 or 20% of their revenue through a fixed charge. So that's one pro, and of course there's cons, right? Because you have a high fixed charge, that lowers the pricing signal since a person's bill is not tied to use, because a large portion of their bill is fixed. So there's only a smaller portion that goes up and down with how much water they're used. So that's a con. And then it also, the other con is that it creates a higher bill for those who use little water. Single people living in an apartment complex or so on, you know, they have that high fixed charge no matter how much water they use. So that's one of the cons. So based on feedback from the pricing objectives with City Council several months ago, where you said conservation and affordability is important, that would suggest that we lower the fixed charge a little bit from 58% to what have you, of course, what have you being the magic number. So we have three scenarios for you to choose from this evening. One is leave it alone, where you collect 58% fixed revenue as you do now. The other one is at the other end, where you do what the average agency does in Southern California of 30%. And then the last one is midway in between. So you'll be looking at the resulting single-family bill for each one of those rate structures for each financial plan. I put this slide in here because this is a very quick tutorial on how we go about setting rates. We take your costs and we allocate them to these cost component buckets. This is straight out of the AWW, American Water Works Association M1 manual for rate setting. So we take your costs and we do our best to allocate your costs to these different buckets. And the ones on the left are normally collected through a volumetric rate. That's why you see the brackets underneath the three on the left. The ones on the right, the meter maintenance and customer service, are normally collected through a fixed charge. Okay, and then the one in the middle, extra capacity, that's what we actually play with when I'm talking about, you know, 58% fixed revenue versus 30 versus 45. We're taking that green bucket and we're allocating a different amount to whether it's being collected through your volumetric rate or your fixed charge. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because this is your current rate structure. Okay, for commercial and irrigation, you have a fixed monthly meter charge by meter size, okay, in the table on the left there, and then they pay a volumetric rate of $4.48. And then your residential customers, you can ignore small business because you don't actually charge small businesses in this way. But your residential customers, they pay a fixed charge, you can see, of $37.62 for single family, which is the top number, and then $37.62 per multi-unit apartment dwelling unit, so to speak. And then they pay a volumetric rate of $3.80. So what we're recommending is to actually get rid of this multi-unit residential charge. And the reason why we're recommending that is because it doesn't follow cost of service principles per the AWWA M1 manual. Because normally that fixed charge recovers the customer billing costs and the meter service costs. So coming back to this charge, I understand that your multifamily apartments don't have their own meters, okay, so we can't allocate them any meter maintenance costs. Meter maintenance costs is the cost associated with replacing meters and servicing meters. So we can't, and this goes into the fixed charge, so we can't allocate them those costs, so to speak, and then multifamily units don't get their own bill, from what I understand, asking your staff. So we can't allocate them customer service costs, okay? And I've discussed this with our CEO and our executive vice president and so on, and we don't want to change rates for the sake of changing rates, but I'm sure you've heard of all the water rate setting litigation that's going on in Southern California, San Juan, City of Lincoln, Sweetwater Authority. One of our first jobs is to make sure your rates are defensible, okay? And so we're making this recommendation to follow AWWA cost of service setting principles, okay? So let's get into the financial plan and the rate structure options. In all of the scenarios that I'm going to walk you through in the matrix here, the city draws down its reserves, and by the 5th year, it reaches your total reserve target. So essentially, what we've been asked to do is you're essentially buying down your rates with your reserves, okay? So you have an O&M reserve target, which is 25% of operating expenses, and that's roughly about $1.7 million to hold in reserve. Then you didn't previously have one, but we're establishing one for you, a capital reserve, which right now is 10% of your water system asset value, and that equals about $2.2 million, which means in total, the total reserve goal is about $4 million that we think you should have in reserve. And graphically, just to show you what that means, is you're starting right now with $12 million in the bank, okay, in reserves. And in each of these different financial plan scenarios, you would essentially buy down your rates so that by the 5th year in 2021, you can see the green bar, which is your reserves, equals or is at the red line, which is your total reserve target. Okay. Now, each financial plan takes a different path there. They don't all go down like this symmetrically. But by the 5th year, you end up at your reserve goal. So in the next slide is the matrix. I just want to point out that the average single-family and multifamily bills shown on the following slide assume a 3-tier rate structure. Okay. So I hope you can see this, but we were asked to present all these financial plan and rate structure scenarios, and I need to go through these fairly slowly to make sure that you understand them. So let's, on the very first line, you see financial plan scenario 1, okay, and it's called full city CIP. That means the city would do that $33 million worth of CIP that we showed earlier. But to do so, the city would have to issue a bond, approximately $16 million, okay, give or take. And we're also assuming, okay, we've been asked to sort of give you a high or maybe a worst case scenario from the consumer's standpoint, okay, and this is option 1. And then a low and something in between. So option 1 is this worst case scenario from a consumer's point of view, if in terms of paying from their wallet, okay? And it assumes that the city would issue a $16 million bond, and we're not refinancing the general fund loan. We're leaving it alone. We're not changing the interest rate. We're not paying back some of that $800,000 in principal. Okay, again, this is to give you the worst case scenario. And you can see underneath the column that says revenue adjustments, there's a 10, 7, 7, 5, and 5. What we're saying there is that in fiscal year 18, you would collect 10% more revenue than you did in fiscal year 2017. And then after that, you would adjust those rates that on the right, those 4 columns on the right, they would go up every year by 7%, then another 7%, then another 5, and then another 5. Okay? So And seeing this for the first time, I can only guess that this is probably a lot to absorb. So I want to make sure I'm going slow, or perhaps you're getting it, which is great. So for financial plan 1, there's a column that says current monthly bill. So this is the average single-family bill right now. This assumes about 5 or 6 HCF. These are monthly, by the way. Okay, the average single-family bill is about $57. I'm rounding here, okay, 56.62, $57. And what we're saying is if we left your rate structure, remember the whole first row is one financial plan. So we're collecting the same amount of revenue for each rate structure. Okay, so the average single-family bill, if we left your rate structure alone, such that you're collecting 58% of your revenue through that fixed charge, it would go from $57 to about 69 and change. Okay? And then on the right of that, it's a rate structure where we lower your fixed charge, and then your volumetric rates would go up. That would create a single-family bill of 57 and change, compared to the 56 and change. Okay, and then we have that middle ground. Remember I said we're going to give you for the rate structure current 30, which is a SoCal average, and then something in the middle. So that 45% there is something in the middle. Your average single-family bill would go to $63.91, and then underneath that I also have multifamily bills, if you'd like to review those. Okay, so current bill. This is again full CIP, $57. Depending on the rate structure, it's 69, 57 and change, and 63 and change. Okay? Is that clear before I move on to the other financial plans? Okay? So the next financial plan is where we're calling it Water Master Plan CIP. This is the one where you're doing that Water Master Plan from AKM Engineers, that $19 million a year. Over 5 years, okay? So in this second column here, the city does not take on any additional debt. Okay, we've assumed, to hit a middle ground, you do refinance the general fund loan from a 5% to 2.87%, and we leave the RO system on. And then we have revenue adjustments of 2.5% each year. So then that produces a set of rates. It would go from the same $56, but in this case it would go to 64 and change, or 53 and change, or 59 and change. Okay, that would be fiscal year 2018. And then after that it would go up 2.5% every year. And that's what I mean by the revenue adjustment of 2.5% a year. So those rates you see right there, the 64 and the 53 and the 59, they would go up 2.5% every year for the next 5 years. Okay, so that's the rates for financial plan scenario number 2. Financial plan scenario number 3 is the one in which we do no CIP. And as you can imagine, this produces the lowest rates. So here, to give you the absolute bottom, as we've been requested to do, this is no CIP. We refinance the general fund loan from 5% to 2.8%, and we apply that principal reduction of $800K. Remember the amount that the city owes. We lower the amount that the water enterprise owes, and we also shut the RO system, which helps, but it's not it's not as big as these other factors. So in this column where it says one-time decrease of 60%, the water enterprise would decrease its revenue by 60% in fiscal year 2018, and as you can see, the bills go from 56 and change again down to 25 underneath your current rate structure, 21 if we have a 30% fixed rate structure, and 23 with a 45% fixed rate structure. And then they would stay the same for 5 years. That's a one-time revenue decrease of 60%. Okay? And then lastly, this one, it's like Sesame Street. You remember, which one is not like the others. the first top three, the financial plans, they all collect the same amount of revenue. But the last one, they collect slightly different amounts of revenue because we've been requested to set the average single-family bill equal to $51 per month. And I believe that has to do because the Ventura County Housing Authority has a rent credit towards the water costs. So what we did is we set the rate such that the single-family customers, their average bill is $51 per month. And we did that for each one of these different rate structures. Okay, so the one that says current, you would have a revenue decrease of 19%. You see that in the third to last column. Assuming your current fixed revenue of 59%, you would have a revenue decrease of 19%. The average single-family bill would be $51 per month. You would collect about $6.4 million in revenue, and you would be able to do 31% of the full city CIP. Remember that slide where I showed you at the bottom? So whatever the full city CIP is for any particular year, you can do a third of it. So remember, in the first year it was $9 million, so just take a third of that. That's what you can execute if you were to have rates set at $51 per month. You would be able to do a third of your CIP. Okay, and then we have the two other rate structure scenarios, the 30%. You would have a revenue decrease of 2.4%, a one-time revenue decrease. You would collect about $7 million, and you'd be able to do 46% of your CIP, of your full city CIP. And then lastly, it's that middle ground with the rate structure. You'd have a revenue decrease of 12%. You would collect about $6.6 million, and you would be able to do 37% of your yearly CIP. In the middle, in between 31 and 46. So you're essentially looking at 12 rate options, and they're divided into 3 financial plans, a high, a low, and a medium, and then this fourth one where we're just setting rates equal to $51 a month. As you can imagine, showing you the rates for all of these 12 scenarios would be many, many slides, so I chose not to do that, but I selected one just to show you what the rates look like, so you can see. So I selected financial plan scenario number 2, and the 45% fixed rate structure. So it's the one I'm circling that has a single family bill of $59.58 and a multifamily rate of bill of $272. So I'm just saying, for the sake of argument, let's go look at what rates would look like for that particular scenario, because your rates would be different for each 12 of these different scenarios. Okay? What we're trying to do at this presentation today is get your feedback on which financial plan and rate structure scenario to pursue and present at the public hearing, Prop 218 public hearing. So we're going to come back to this slide, but let's just look at rates for that scenario that I pointed out. And I think we're all getting down to the final four or five slides. So again, this is for financial plan 2 with the rate structure collecting 45% fixed revenue. So you would have a fixed charge, which is in the middle here where it says proposed monthly fixed charge of $35 and change. Okay, and that would be for everybody, all customers. It depends solely on their meter size, whether you're single family, multifamily, commercial, industrial, city, what have you. This charge is based on your meter size, because the theory here is that the capacity and the meter maintenance charges are proportional to the potential flow through each meter. Okay, so in this particular case, your current charge is $31. It would go up to $35.64, and these are all in proportion to current meter capacity, hydraulic capacity ratios put forth in the American Water Works Association manual. There are certain flows, safe flows through different meter sizes, and all these charges are in proportion to that. Okay. So you would have a fixed charge, and then you would have, for residential, single-family and multifamily, we're proposing a 3-tier volumetric rate. And for informational purposes, the Tier 1 breakpoint is set at minimum winter bi-monthly use. So in other words, Tier 1 kind of satisfies your indoor water needs for essential water use. Tier 2 is your max summer bi-monthly use. So you could say anything beyond Tier 2, for the most part, ends up for outdoor irrigation needs. And by the way, your data is one such that you don't have a lot of outdoor irrigation needs here in the city. They're fairly close compared to many of our clients have small yards and just not a lot of outdoor irrigation needs. And then Tier 3 is anything beyond that. So here's that volumetric rate for scenario 2. And the way we do it to meet defensibility for Proposition 218 is we sum the different, remember those buckets I showed you? There's different unit rates for each one of those buckets. And over on the right, you see the total rate. So what we're saying here for single family, Tier 1, their total volumetric rate underneath this scenario is 475. And you get there, I'm only mentioning this so to meet the rigors of Prop 218, because they ask you, well, how did you set that rate? It's the addition of these different unit rates of $1.79 to get and treat water, $2 to deliver water under average daily demand conditions, 78 cents to deliver water during peaking or peak times of use, which is normally during the summer. There's daily peaks as well. So it's 78 cents during that, and then you have a conservation program of 9 cents. You add all of those up, and it's $4.75 for Tier 1. We do the same thing for each tier, and this provides the justification in going from $4.75 in Tier 1 to $5 in Tier 2 and $7.34 in Tier 3. And this is where San Juan Capistrano got into trouble, as they used, I'll call, random multipliers to get their different tiered rates. We're continuing the residential care program, which is, I believe, a 7.5% discount for the volumetric rate. So we're continuing that. And then we have, for all other non-residential classes, you can see commercial, city property irrigation, and city irrigation. We have a uniform rate there in the right-hand column, $5.62 for commercial and city, and $5.85 for irrigation and city irrigation. And you may ask, well, why are they different? All of these rates are based on peaking factors that we got from your usage data. So irrigation and city irrigation has a slightly higher rate of $5.85 compared to $5.62. Why? Because as you might imagine, their water use over the course of the year peaks more. And therefore, we allocate them a little bit more of the costs that are associated with peaking. So it's 20 cents more because irrigation accounts has the outdoor irrigation needs. So the more you peak, the more your rate is slightly higher. That's the defensibility there. So that is an example rate derivation. This last slide, I just wanted to show you how it affects your bill with different points of use. So the bottom there, 2.5, 5, 7.5, that's how much water you use, and the orange line is your current bill. Okay, so if you use 2.5, your bill is, $46 or something, and then it goes up in a straight line. The blue line is your tiered rate that we're proposing. Again, remember your pricing objectives: conservation and affordability. So as you can see, the blue line is steeper, thus sending that conservation pricing signal. The more you use, the more your bill is going to go up. Okay, and then you can see at the very beginning, the blue line almost touches the orange line, meaning that if you use very little water, you have the chance to lower your bill. So that's the affordability component of this Tier 3 rate structure. So it starts off as low as we possibly can, and then the more you use, the more you pay. And that inflection point in the middle there, where you see it changes slope, that's you're going from one tier into the other. So that is your current rate structure in orange compared to the proposed 3-tier rate structure. Again, this is assuming financial plan number 2 and 45% fixed rate revenue. If you choose a different scenario, it's going to look slightly different. Okay, and then just for giggles, I put, if you don't have to do a 3-tiered rate structure, you can continue with a uniform rate for everybody. If you chose to do that, it would be the gray line underneath this scenario. Okay, it would be a straight line. Still, you know, sending a conservation signal, but not quite as much as the blue line because it's slightly steeper at higher uses. So that concludes my formal presentation, and I know that's a lot to absorb, but we were asked to present a lot of different scenarios. So I will back up and put it on. The main thrust of this presentation is which financial plan and which rate structure scenario should we pursue? Or questions? Does anyone have any questions before they tackle that?
Mr. Hensley.
Took the grime off the windows so I can see a little bit more. I appreciate that. A couple of things. Very interesting in this, and I understand, do we still have a law in the state that if you're a landlord of multi-units, apartments and so on, that the landlord's supposed to be responsible for all the water bills? In other words,
You know, I'm not sure.
that's what I understood. It used to be, at least. In other words, if you owned a 10-unit apartment or a 5-unit apartment, supposedly, it was 1 meter came in and the landlord
Pays.
paid
Yeah,
it.
I'm a renter, the landlord pays, and to my knowledge, the landlord normally pays. I don't know of any renters that pay their own water bill.
They don't.
Okay.
Well, that's what I mean. They don't, if they're a renter off of a multi-unit structure, they pay the bill through the rent, in a sense,
Right,
correct?
through the
Right,
rent, yeah.
So, and I kind of understood that maybe separating the installation, installing meters per unit, was that what you were suggesting?
No.
No, okay, because I know landlords take a burn sometimes because you got somebody who's, hey, I get free water, so I'm gonna stay in the shower for an hour here, you know. Other people are pretty conservative, it depends. So we're not talking about installing special meters per unit?
No.
Okay, so we're not going to even identify or go into that?
Correct.
Okay, the second question that I have, it's very important to me. We had a special senior discount, low-income discounts for utility services about 1.5 years ago. We just said, no, we need the money, get it out. Now, I know a lot of low-income people that really hurt them, and I think we're only like 8 or 10%, something like that, and I believe Edison's like 15%.
I think you're currently 7.5%.
7.5. Ours or Edison?
Yours.
No, we don't have any, do we? We eradicated that.
7.5%, I'm being told. You
Do
have
we
a
bring
care-
it back again?
We went from 15.
15
That's
to
half.
7.5, but we did leave in measure. Okay.
Mr. Burrell, could you come up here and be prepared to address those questions?
Council, yes, we did, the discount used to be 15%. It was cut to 7.5%.
Okay. What is that average in, Mr. Burrell, on the average double month? In other words, you get a 2-month billing per, right?
Well, I can tell you what it averaged for us in a year. It's about $65,000.
$65,000
Yes.
for the city itself total.
Correct.
Okay, so we would be, if we could bring that up to 14%, 15% again for the low-income people, we might lose 65,000, but we might recoup some money in other positions, right? I thought we just totally did away with it, no?
No, we didn't. We didn't totally
Okay.
do away with it.
Well, that, maybe one of these days we can jack that back up to where it used to be. 7% isn't a lot for a low-income person. Thanks a lot.
No problem. And I think I can answer your question on the other one about the landlords. I believe what the law states is that if one of your tenants skip on their bill, we have the option to make the landlord sign in and be responsible for all future bills.
Yeah.
Mr. Burrell, before you leave, the 7.5% subsidy to those that qualify in the affordable range, are the other ratepayers subsidizing that expense on their behalf?
No, the ratepayers aren't, because that's coming out of the general fund.
So the general fund is subsidizing the ratepayers?
That's correct. I think with 218, we're not allowed to subsidize out of the utility funds.
And what does that come out to on an annual basis, 65,000?
About 65,000, yes.
Thank you. Other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we look at the refinancing of the general fund loan, that would save about $360,000 a year in net service for the water utility, but that would be a concomitant $360,000 a year hit to the city's general fund then. Okay. Now, the $800,000 payment, can that be amortized over a period of time?
Yeah, I'm sure we could apply a certain amount every year. I'm not sure if it would make a difference, but we can definitely look into that. That would just be like a one-time credit to lower the principal.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is minimize the impact of the city's general fund.
Yeah.
That's what the problem has been. I mean, historically, there was a stretch there for a couple of years we kept low rates and subsidized them out of the city's general fund. And the issue here is the health of the city general fund. So,
And you know that in these different scenarios here, there are, the first two, we are not paying back that $800,000. It's just in the third one where we're applying that 800. Okay.
Right. And the capital improvement plans, it's been an issue for some time. We were saving up for that, and then a bunch of stuff happened, and we lost some of the money we were saving. The question is, under the capital improvement plan, does that actually meet our needs? And I don't know if you're the one to answer that or somebody else, because there was one $30 million number out there, there was a $19 million number out there. I don't remember how long ago it was we came up with the 19 million, but if we target that level, I mean, are we going to be meeting our needs?
The items that brought up those different, $30 million or $19 million is the breakdown. If you take the water master plan that the AKM consulting engineers designed, if we were to break that down into smaller phases of work, that's where the 19 million came into play. So if we were to reduce the CIP plan, we could break down into smaller phases or projects, which would reduce the cost, and we would reduce it in time also. I believe the AKM water master plan called for a 10 or 12 year implementation plan. This scenario calls for up to 5 years of either doing the $19 million improvement or the full $31 million. But his presentation does it in a 5-year process.
Right. We've got, we just discussed the water agency meeting, some issues, maintenance issues, repair issues. We've got, some will recall when we had a flooded intersection due to failed I've got a real concern that we are able to maintain our operability. And the decision we're trying to make is what level of funding do we need to do that?
Correct.
So, I don't know if you're offering an opinion on that or willing to offer an opinion on that.
Well, I'll speak from an operations side view. I know that there's customers within the city that are concerned about the low pressure. The failure that you referenced, the intersection failure, that resulted from a stress test that was implemented by the consultant who was doing that water master plan. He says, in order to effectively evaluate your system, I need to know what its breaking point is. And we systematically raised the pressure in the system until we found the breaking point. And that resulted in a 9 PSI increase. And that's all the system could handle. That's why we're operating at a 40 PSI operating pressure within the system. So we can't go over 50 without blowing up the system because of the age or condition of the infrastructure.
That then raises the question about fire flow capability.
Correct, especially on the north end of town.
Right. So as we're trying to come to some kind of decision here, I think we really need to be doing stuff. We really need to try and catch up on this. That was always the plan. But you need money to do that. And the question then becomes, how rapidly can we keep up with it, or can we keep up with it as we get further aging and degradation? And with the $19 million, which is sort of a middle target, I guess, would you be satisfied that that would provide for our needs in the near and medium future?
That $19 million project that's identified is the main trunk line or transmission line that would move water from the Pleasant Valley Ventura Road intersection. It would go all the way up Ventura Road and then turn west and go all the way down Channel Islands to Victoria. The bottleneck, so to speak, is on Ventura Road between Sunkist and Channel Islands Boulevard. There's a single 14-inch diameter pipeline that's supplying all of the fire flow capacity to the north end of town. So this $19 million project would provide a secondary pipeline that would literally be just a transmission line for the purpose of moving water to the north end of town.
We had to rate that as high, medium, or low urgency. Where would you put it?
For me, I would put it at high.
At high.
That would do nothing for the surface streets, aging pipelines in residential areas. This is just simply to move water to the north end of town.
Right, and that's the next question, because we've got other infrastructure needs as well. And then again, same question: high, medium, or low?
Medium to low.
Okay, that helps.
But you're going to have some low pressures.
Yeah.
Still.
Oh, I'm familiar with that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation here. We talked about the money, or maybe you didn't. The money that that is owed back to the general fund. I think it was about 19 million or so.
If you're talking about the amount that the city owes over 3 years for its share of water, that was $800,000 approximately.
No, maybe this is another thing then. So maybe this is a question that the city manager could
I think the council member is referring to the loan from the general fund to the water fund that was made a number of years ago to, I think part of it was funding the meter installation project. And so we're now receiving payment back every year to the general fund from the water fund.
Okay.
But maybe, is that Mr. Burrell's question?
Yes, the loan currently is a little over 14 million
14 million?
that the water fund still owes the city. And I don't believe that went into the calculation. He was more asked about the payback of the money from the water use when the city was not billing itself.
So there's a couple of things here, and I don't know if we wanted to add in, you know, to accelerate it in any way if we can, as we're looking at this, because that is certainly money owed to the general fund.
Yes, it is. It will probably need some more scenarios to get
That worked in?
Yes.
Okay, so could we possibly add that as we're still looking at all of this? I don't want to, well, I just want to make sure that we keep our eye on the ball of that 14 million and don't let it drop at any time, because it's taken us this far along to just start having it come back into the city. It's going to be a long time to get it paid off, but if we're looking at the rates, could we work this into?
I would only provide one caution, because if you notice, his first scenario was the city actually bonding $16 million. If we start moving that money out rapidly, we won't have enough to really have somebody bond us at a decent rate, because there is nothing left in the fund. So I would caution on how rapid we pull that money
So
out.
it's a little bit of like having your
It's-
foot on the
yes,
gas and
yes.
the brake too, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so if we could just continue to keep our eye on that ball as well, without having it throw everything out of kilter. So that would be my concern then. Okay. I think that's it for right now, my question.
I have lots of questions, and I think you saw them. And I don't want to bore the audience, particularly with the amount of information that's been presented. My suggestion is that each of the council members provide you with those questions, including the ones that I've offered, and I would like a more elaborate written response at our next regular meeting. There's a whole host of questions, things like the fact that the city has been charging its ratepayers for the use of its own municipal landscaping. And we picked a 3-year term, $800,000 payback. Well, why 3 years? How long has the city been charging its ratepayers for the use of landscape maintenance or landscape irrigation that should have been charged to the general fund? I kind of look at this as, you know, do we want to pave our streets in gold, but nobody can afford to put gas in their car to use the streets? And that's kind of how I see what's going on here. We talk about protecting the general fund, but we're doing it at the expense of the ratepayers. We have the highest rates of any municipal water provider in this county, and we have the lowest incomes. So this idea that we got to be careful about the general fund, well, I got news for you. We've been riding the backs of our ratepayers to try to prop up the general fund. There's a reason why half of our neighborhoods now have no grass growing, no landscaping. There's a reason for that. And you've seen my questions. I question everything from some of the original information you provided to this agency, as well as the Port Hueneme Water Authority, regarding the different scenarios of blending water from Cayugas and United. And now I'm being told, oh, those numbers are not correct. Well, I have some serious questions about the veracity of the information. So, you've got my questions. And I'm hoping that we can expect to see responses to those questions, along with any other questions that this council would like to offer. And I'd like to see it in writing. And I'd like to see it in advance, so we don't have to go through this kind of exercise at flying by the seat of the pants at a meeting like this. We ought to have time to digest that information. Is that possible?
Yes, it is. If the rest of the council would like to submit their questions, we can put together a timeline of when you can respond, and we'll be working on that as soon as we get the rest of the council questions, and we'll start working on responses to yours.
Well, I'm only one person. This is the council. The body has to decide how they'd like to proceed. That's my request, but I look to the council to either disagree or concur with that, and then they can offer their questions to you as I have.
Can I make a suggestion? So what's the ultimate timeline goal to get this done? And maybe we work backwards from there. I mean,
This is
Mr.
2
Mayor,
years
you-
past due.
No, but, you know, I'm just asking, as we started this, Mr. Mayor, you probably have an idea as to, you know, what time frame you wanted to get this underway.
First year that I was elected.
Well,
We're
I know,
past that.
I know, but, you know, let's take a look at what would
Well,
be
how can I
the,
answer the question?
what would be the goal?
Okay, one of the questions that needs to be addressed, and Mr. Sharkey was right on spot, is the CIP, the urgency. What is the legal requirement for us to transport water at a certain pressure to the north end of town? What is the legal obligation? Have people been harmed to this point in time? It's one thing for an engineer to say, in a perfect world, I'd like to pave our streets in gold. But we don't have that luxury. So I would like to know what the, and Mr. Sharkey asked the question. You gave an opinion, a personal opinion, high priority. I want to know what the legal ramifications are. Because if we're going to be putting that kind of burden on all of our ratepayers, perhaps we should be looking at an assessment district for those that would benefit from that improvement. And they could decide whether they want that additional pressure or are they willing to pay for that expense. But why put it on the backs of all the ratepayers? Those are the sorts of questions, and you've seen them, that I am very much interested in getting your responses to. So, what's the attitude of the council?
So when we're referring to a timeline, are we talking about a response in writing to those questions?
I don't really care how long it takes, as long as we get down, drill down to those questions.
You had a,
Well,
you
I
had a
just wanted to
suggestion?
answer your question about a timeline. This financial plan and the assumptions assumes that you're implementing rates in December. So if you don't make a decision by then so that you can implement rates by December, that will change your financial plan slightly. Now, the more it slips, the more your costs goes up, and the more that you may have to increase rates. So it just assumes a rate implementation by December.
Okay? And how long do we expect? Let's just work off my list of questions that I've provided you. How long do you think you could respond to those?
Mr. Hickox is not going to be here next week, but I will review them, and we'll come back and give you a timeline. I'm going to discuss what you brought up about legal requirements for pressure with our city attorney, and touch base with other agencies as a reference, so that I can come back with an answer to that question, along with consulting with Mr. Green. Certainly, probably, I'm looking at probably the latter part of October before we come back with answers to all your questions, possibly the first council meeting in November right now. And I can give you an update after I've had a chance to thoroughly vet all your questions.
Okay, then. What kind of consensus can I get from the council?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, then, we'll look forward to having a report back and any updates as to the timeline necessary. And I would ask my colleagues, I've heard several different sets of questions here, please put those in writing and provide it to the Public Works Department, and we'll add that to the list. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, don't go away. I got a speaker card here, I forgot. Eileen, Tracy, you said 8B. I don't know if it was this item or the strategic plan that you wanted to address. The strategic plan is the next item on the agenda.
But can I just say a couple little things to this too? I'll give another speaker card.
We'll split the 3 minutes in half. Please, go ahead.
I have to say, the clear question I can tell you is, if you take money from the general fund to pay poor people's bill, that's a gifting of public funds, and it's illegal unless you have the residents' approval. So I'd like you to look into that with your attorney. And secondly, I'm so confused, because my bill right now, my second bi-monthly bill is about $215. And these rates, they were looking at it, looks wonderful to me, because it looks like I'd be getting a huge discount. So I guess I don't understand, because I've always questioned the fixed rate. I don't use that much water. I'm probably one of the lowest water users in the city. I don't have landscaping or any of that. And I just know my current bill, it's all under the fixed rate. And so these look great. Let's switch to one right now, as far as I'm concerned.
This includes water and
Can I do that?
water, sewer, trash.
Pardon?
I think.
So I didn't use my minute and a half, so I can still come back at
Oh,
8.
yeah, you're fine, you're fine. Did you want to respond?
Yes,
Mr.
sir, if
Hickox?
I may. Eileen? This, your current water bill includes water, sewer, and trash?
That's what I was saying.
And
Yeah,
these rates are only for water service.
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you for that.
So they're not a side-by-side comparison.
Okay, I'll check into it and if I still
Yes, and this is monthly.
I picked up on that, but I may still come back because of the fixed rate. I don't know.
Okay.
Everybody gets that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, I think that we're ready to move on to 8B, which is the strategic planning process for water supply.
All right, thank you, Mayor Fig. Once again, this is my item to present. A couple of things we discussed, mentioned or referenced earlier today is that we've had discussions with Port Hueneme Water Agency and/or Channel Islands Beach Community Services District's board members related to a strategic workshop. And in the PHWA meeting last month, it was recommended that the city take a look at a similar strategic workshop for the city of Port Hueneme. And there was some interest in possibly having such a workshop. So this evening, I am requesting that the council enter into a service agreement with KEH Consultants here locally that would provide an analysis of our strategic plan or a potential for a future strategic plan. Because water has so many options and so many strings to be pulled on, it's very important that we take a look at each of the options that are available to us as we try to wade through these rough waters, no pun intended. And there's an opportunity for this council to maybe answer some questions independently. This consultant will use a electronic clicker, which would allow them to monitor your questions, your answers to the questions. It would allow you to provide those answers anonymously, and yet at the end of the workshop in this program, they would go over the results of this program with you to see where the council as a whole feels that there's areas that need attention. And how do you feel, what would be the best option for moving forward after reviewing those potential options? And so it was requested that the council participate in this workshop and identify where council feels that the agency needs to go, or the city needs to go, what direction. And there may be a point in time where the consultant will evaluate not only our workshop results, but also Channel Islands Beach Community Services District, and see where the two agencies may or may not line up in the movement forward or future projects. So this is kind of a combination request of both staff and PHWA or CIB CSD board members to see if there is a unified movement that needs to take place. And so that's what this workshop is all about. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This dovetails with discussion we had at the Water Agency earlier.
Correct.
And as well as the comment that was made here by one of the speakers. We all know the condition of the Oxnard wastewater plant, which is, we have capacity in that. We're joined at the hip with Oxnard on that. We also have staff working on some of the contractual issues between our city and the city of Oxnard. I'm convinced going forward that the only way we're going to get more water is through reclamation, and we ought to be thinking about reclamation and not just treatment. I've had conversations with some of our friends over at the Oxnard City Council, and there's a great deal of support for having joint city council meetings to look at the future and how we can work together. This is a time of urgency, but that creates opportunity as well. And I firmly believe we have the opportunity to provide for the needs of 250,000 people for the next 30, 40 years if we do this. And if we don't do it, then shame on us. So as we look at this workshop and structuring this workshop and the kinds of issues that we're going to be discussing, those are factors I think that the consultant would need to know, and those may be part of the scope, I guess.
Yes, definitely.
Of what's going on. So, because we're staff, the staff of the two cities and the council of the two cities are eager to move on. I know the Beach District is interested as well. So if and I think that's we're going to have to do that if we're going to move forward. So just as far as what the consultant needs to know, I think that's an important factor.
And this, if I may, this is not a strategic plan by any means. It's just simply a strategic workshop to see if there's a real need to maybe move forward with developing a full-on strategic plan. So.
Councilman Sharkey, certainly if you could email what you would like to see as additional scope possibly for this workshop, that would be of great benefit, and any other council members, so that we would have this beforehand, so that we could give that to the consultant if you choose to go forward with this, so that we would have more in line with the questions you have, and they would be prepared to address those at the workshop.
Well, my understanding is that in large part the heavy lifting's already been accomplished by way of the Community Beach Services District, having done a full-blown strategic planning process. And so we're essentially reviewing and assessing their conclusions and findings as they relate to our circumstance and our desires.
That is partially true. They have done some of the research, and there is some synergy by using the same consultant. They don't have to reinvent all the wheel, and research, some of the research has already been done. So you are correct that some of the work has already been done, but we will be looking at it with respect to the city, and that's important.
Mr. Sharkey, we had this discussion earlier this afternoon with the Port Hueneme Water Authority, and the thought process is somehow to have through our administrative and political channels is to engage our principal partners in a broader discussion, not just water, but wastewater and other incidental features that we all have a vested interest in. Is that kind of what you're just reaffirming?
Yeah, that's a fair statement, and I think if we're going to be looking at developing a strategic plan or having a workshop, that's Whether we get to that level of detail is another question, but in terms of what the consultant needs to know coming in, I think that's an important thing that needs to be out there that everybody needs to understand.
Do you think it would be appropriate that we have that workshop and have our own internal discussion before we schedule any kind of joint meetings with those bodies?
Well, quite frankly, Mr. Mayor, I don't think we're ready to schedule anything. There's staff work being done right now, and you know, however long. When staff has, I hate to use the word completes their assignment, because I don't know if that's the right word, but when staff has the groundwork laid to report back on current action and as some that will allow us the opportunity to look at future action. This, I assume, is coming up pretty quickly, this workshop?
Yes, sir. It's a 9-week process, and there'll be some data collection required up front regarding the agreements that you referenced earlier. The consultant needs to have a clear image of what they're evaluating. Then they'll set up a workshop so that this council can participate in the question and answer period, so to speak. And then they'll take that information back and evaluate it, and then we'll come back with a presentation on the results of the workshop and the whole process itself. And I think that the schedule here says December 4th presentation. I think given the holidays that are coming, this might be stretched out maybe to the first of the year,
right,
before a final is presented.
So my point on that is that I think they all need to be aware that there are big concepts being considered, and if there is somewhere somehow funding for a reclamation project that benefits us all, then that's the notion is that, where are you going to get more water, and the only place I see is reclamation, and so they should know that at least we're thinking about it. We're not very far down that road yet, but that's, some of us at least would like to see us go there.
Other questions, thoughts?
I think that's a good idea.
So you have a recommendation, or you're asking for approval of the scope of work, correct?
Enter into a service agreement with KEH for $13,000.
Do I hear a motion? Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved.
Thank you.
And Eileen, I'm sorry, this was item 8B that I got out of order here. Did you want to address the council on this issue? Pardon? Yes, would you like to come? I'm sorry that I passed you over. You didn't hit me.
So my name is Eileen Tracy. I live at Wainimi Bay. And I was really worried as I spoke at the water agency that there's some things that are known in Oxnard that aren't generally known down here. And I really wish you could, joining in with you, Councilmember Sharkey, that a way to help ourselves out, but sometimes it takes a long-term plan. And what I told you is what I've heard in Oxnard is that, they only gave us a 5-year lease because they might want to kick us out of the water treatment plant on Wainimi Road in 5 years. And they raised the lease rate from $1 to $1,400, something like that. But I'm told here that's under negotiation. Let's luck with that. And as you mentioned, the wastewater costs are going to increase significantly. I was told in Oxnard that the regional rates increased and were mailed out to people like the water agency here and have increased. That's why the residents in Oxnard are suing the city, because they don't go for the new water rates. And but it's a big secret down here. Nobody knows about it. So, if you were doing long-term planning, you kind of want to include all that stuff. It seems like you need more open information. I'd appreciate it. I think that's all I'm going to say for now.
Thank you. That was spot on. And you know, it might be prudent to have this as an agenda item because it has been an issue out there, is that how is this going to impact our residents? And I don't know if we've done that analysis yet to find out that whatever Oxnard does is going to have a trickle-down effect. Is that something that we can ask you to do, to provide a little bit more insight as to what the impact might be to our residents?
We can certainly do that. We can get with the wastewater staff and evaluate the proposed rates and see what the impact it would be.
Okay, well, whenever that's convenient or possible. I don't know if there's immediate urgency, but I think it's a topic that's timely.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that then gets us to 9A, which would be an oral report. Is that correct, Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right on. I'm not gonna hit you. I might use my hand to stomp on your foot.
All right, well, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. This is just a quick update as to where we are in our cannabis application process to date. We have a total of 4 applications in. One you are aware of for manufacturing has been acted upon to some extent as of last week, and we are waiting for feedback as to what the applicant wants to do with regard to the next steps. We also have 3 applications in for dispensaries right now. The first application, which was from Paul Watson, representing the Hueneme Patient Consumer Co-op, which is proposed in what we call the Hardy Mall building, which is the 3-story office building just to the east of Wheelhouse and Channel Islands, was issued last week on the 11th, the city's first conditional certificate of approval, which is the first step in the approval process to open the dispensary. We are currently working on the conditional use permit application staff report and resolution, and the city attorney has started work on the development agreement for that project. We do anticipate bringing it forward to the council for action on October 16th. Our second application, which is for a dispensary just next door in the 2-story office building there on the corner of Wheelhouse and Channel Islands, is incomplete, as we like to call it in Planarese. There's basically some studies and quite a bit of additional information that we need from the applicant. So that application right now is being worked on. I sent several pages of comments from the committee, such as the police chief, myself, HDL, back to the applicant requesting additional information so we can move the application forward to you. Our last application to date was submitted by Bob Tatum, and that's for Freedom First Association, and that is a dispensary located, or at least proposed, on the first floor of the building at 2675 North Ventura Road. That's basically the kind of the L-shaped office complex, more or less behind the USA gas station car wash back there in the corner. We actually approved the conditional certificate of approval this afternoon for them. So they are also moving fairly quickly through the process. They've been very responsive to our request for additional information. And so, again, if all things go well with the development agreement negotiations, we should also have that application to you again on October 16th. So we anticipate having 2 conditional use permit and development agreement applications to you next month. And then finally, I am anticipating receiving a new application this coming Wednesday. I'm a little fuzzy as to exactly which property it is on Hueneme Road. I'm assuming it's over by the little blue house that we own. That's basically what the applicant portrayed it as being, and I'm not sure exactly what the application is for. I'm assuming a dispensary because it's C1 zone, but we shall find out. And once we do, we'll move that information on to you. So that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I have a question. You know, as the names come up, the applicants, are they partnerships? Are they sole proprietorships? Are they, what are they? Because the names are very different. They almost sound like they're nonprofit.
They are nonprofits at this point. We do have, for instance, Mr. Tatum's is represented as basically under his name. However, we do have partnerships as well coming forward. So there's a small variety because, like I said,
A
we only have
mixture of,
few.
okay, okay.
You didn't mention Yilo, or I always get that one fouled up. Have we had any further dialogue with them?
We have not. The Tuesday morning, first thing following the Friday council meeting, I emailed the applicant, Karsten, asking what basically he was planning on doing, offered to give him a conditional certificate of approval if he was interested in moving forward. However, to date, we have not heard back from him.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thanks for the update. So that should bring us to council reports and comments and the like, unless Mr. Butler, did you have any other comments under your part of the agenda?
Just going to mention it may tie into something that I think Councilmember Munoz-Schnapp is going to mention briefly. I know we had a little bit of a snafu at the CB 75th anniversary celebration. I think the whole council attended, where several organizations and assembly, I think the port for sure, Assemblymember Irwin had certificates to present, in honor of the occasion, and we did not have anything from the city. So I've talked to Michelle about that today. She and I are going to really try to be more cognizant of events that might require a proclamation or a certificate of some kind. But we need your partnership in that as the council, and I think we'll be most effective that way if you know of an event. Some of you already do this, where you're going to be participating in the event, you would like to, or you think the expectation will be that you will have a proclamation or a certificate. Make sure to let me and Michelle know that. I would say if it's an email, for example, copy both of us, and that's gives us a little more chance to make sure that we don't drop the ball. So I think working together between Michelle, me, and then the council, we should be able to avoid situations like that in the future.
Well, no, I'll take the fall on this. I attended, as I believe everyone did from the council. I thought it was a social event. That's at least the way it was advertised. And so it just slipped my mind as not being something that you would do a formal presentation. So I hear you, and it is a hit and miss proposition, and it's a two-way street. So I think your message is well received. Okay, I wish I hadn't given you the opportunity to. Okay, so now we're to council reports and me.
But
Oh,
as a follow-up to that, may I make a suggestion that we invite the commands then to come, who are part of CB's, and we can do our own recognition here at a future city council meeting.
Absolutely. And we have a representative. I see her shaking her head, so please deliver the message. All right, so now we are at council reports and any takers.
Yeah, the Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Hensley, and I attended the 50th anniversary of the Fred Williams School, 1967, the year I graduated high school. The school looks better than I do. It was a great event. It's always great to be there with the kids, and yeah, they're doing good things over the school district.
And then I also attended the a CB, let's see, how is it worded? It's a fundraiser for the CB Ball, and so it actually happened Friday, right before the 75th anniversary. And so what they try to do is to buy down the price of the CB Ball at the Ronald Reagan for all our active duty servicemen and women. And they try to keep the cost reasonable so that then they're fundraising. Some of the larger folks that go with lots of money to spend. They certainly pick up really nice things, but, there's a bid for using somebody's private jet, and, the bid has to start at like $4,000. And, so it's a really kind of higher fundraiser, but all in all, I think it brings in quite a bit of money in order for then our folks to be able to attend the CB Ball, and that's normally in the spring of every year. So just wanted to let you know that.
A couple of things. I attended last week League of California Cities annual convention and did my duty in voting for a couple of resolutions to support local control. In some of the sessions that I attended, I was pleased to learn that we're on the right track. We've gone through a pretty intense budgetary process in trying to develop policies and the like, so that we're stronger in the end. In fact, we are very much on par with the kind of the pulse of other cities in California. I think we're ahead of the game, but there's still other policies that we'll probably want to revisit to add to what we've been trying to do, and that is to reconcile the structural deficit in the long run. So I was pleased to see that and hear that I think we're well on the way. So that's encouraging. Interesting business regarding cannabis and thoughts on the whole process of dealing with a cash and carry kind of business. I won't bore you with the details, but some interesting thoughts that came from that, as well as revenue scenarios. That not all types of cannabis businesses should be regulated, at least from the revenue side, in the same fashion. Gross receipts, everybody gravitates to a percentage of gross receipts, but that's not really appropriate for all types of businesses. And again, I'll share this information with you, Mr. Butler, and whatever it might be worth. There was a company in particular, Municipal Services, which is kind of a competitor to HDL. And I was very impressed with their presentation and their understanding of the business. You don't want to kill the goose, and it was a very interesting discussion. The last thing is, and it's unrelated to the League of California Cities, but I saw a very interesting article here recently regarding a particular landlord that we've had some dealings with here in Port Hueneme, who owns a number of hotels and apartment facilities that are in disrepair. And we have one here on Hueneme Road, the Surfside Motel. And how long have we been at it now?
Years.
2-3 years? I think it's time that we turn this over to our city attorney and turn the heat up. Enough's enough. And this gentleman in the article was not very complimentary of his real estate activities in other communities. And I think we ought to take note, do what we need to do. Okay. Closing comments? All right, we're now at open forum. This is your opportunity to address us on anything that isn't on the agenda that we haven't already covered. Any takers? Oh, I see one.
On behalf of a friend, a neighbor in Port Hueneme, and a fellow member of POV who works for the LA school system, he came in and gave me this note and had to run out again. Mayor Tom Figg in Port Hueneme City Council, as a Hueneme Bay resident and 4-year resident of the city of Port Hueneme, and as a 17-year teacher in the Los Angeles United Schools District, I wish to give my full support for the city of Port Hueneme to adopt a resolution showing full support of the U.S. Constitution. I urge the Port Hueneme Council to embrace the founding document of the United States. Sincerely, Michael Hernandez. And I told him I had the opportunity to give him the great news that you did. So it was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I will adjourn to our next regular meeting, October 2nd.